I was the only one in the diner that night when the coughing started. You ever notice how a sound can split the air in two? It wasn't just a cough. It was wet, guttural, like something was tearing in the man's throat. His stool squeaked against the linoleum as he hunched forward, his hand pressed to his mouth. I turned my coffee mug in my hands, pretending not to stare, but I couldn't help it. Nobody could. Even the fry cook peeked out from the kitchen window. We all thought the same thing. Flu, cold, maybe just a smoker hacking up years of tar. But when he pulled his hand away, there was too much red glistening on his palm. Too much. I should have left right then. I should have thrown a couple of bills on the counter and walked out into the cold street. But I didn't. I stayed, and that's why I'm telling you this now. The man gasped like he was drowning on dry land. His chest heaved, and his eyes rolled white for a moment. Somebody shouted for help. Another reached for their phone. The fry cook pushed open the swinging door, rag still clutched in one greasy hand. Like that would do anything. Then the coughing stopped. Just like that. Silence stretched so thin, I swore I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights above. The man sat upright, shoulders rigid, blood smeared across his lips like lipstick gone wrong. His eyes cleared. He looked around the diner, slow, deliberate, as if he didn't recognize where he was. And then he smiled. That was the first time I saw it. The thing nobody wants to talk about. The thing the news won't show ye. The survivors. I didn't know it then. None of us did. But I swear to you, that smile wasn't his anymore. The fry cook took a hesitant step forward, his rag half raised. "Sir, you okay?" The man nodded. Too quickly, too precise, like his head was on a hinge. The rag fell from the cook's hand. The rest of us, we stayed in our seats, frozen, like children waiting to see if the monster had noticed us yet. I'll never forget the way the man's fingers twitched on the counter. Not nervous twitches, not fidgeting. No, each one bent back just a little too far, like something was testing how far the flesh could stretch without tearing. That was when I got up. I left my coffee, left my coat on the booth. The bell over the door rang out, and the sound seemed to break whatever trance the others were under. Someone shouted my name, but I didn't look back. The street was empty, slick with melted snow and neon reflections. My breath fogged as I hurried across, each step faster than the last. I didn't even know where I was going, anywhere but there. And yet, I could feel him watching me from behind the glass. You think I'm exaggerating, don't you? That maybe panic painted it worse in my memory. But no. The glow of the diner lights cut across the street, and I saw his face pressed to the window. Blood still on his lips, smile still too wide. He didn't blink. I didn't go back for my coat. I didn't go back for my car keys. I just kept walking into the dark, and I swear to you, that was the last normal night of my life. See, by morning, there were more. The local news blamed contaminated water at first, then a mutated flu strain. Hospitals filled with coughing, bleeding, gasping patients. Most of them died within hours, but not all. Some got back up. You'd think death would leave people fragile, weak, but no. The survivors, if you can even call them that, walked out of those hospitals with strange steadiness. Their skin pale, their eyes glassy, their smiles just a little too sharp. And it spread fast. I watched my town turn in less than a week. Streets once filled with dog walkers and kids on bikes turned silent, curtains drawn, doors bolted. But you can't bolt yourself in forever, can you? Not when it comes crawling into your house, with the face of your neighbor, your brother, your wife. That's the part nobody warned us about. Not the coughing, not the blood, not even the fever that burned so hot it left people delirious before they collapsed. No, the part that truly breaks you, the part that gets under your skin, is when the ones who survive it come back wrong. I saw it up close. Too close. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I need you to understand how it began, how it looked before the world went sideways. If I skip ahead, you won't believe me. You'll think I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. God knows I haven't slept more than a few hours in weeks. Still, if you were me, would you have turned around that night? Gone back into the diner to see what he became? Or would you have done what I did? Walk away, pretend it wasn't happening. Doesn't matter now, because the next time I saw him, he wasn't alone. And what they were doing, what they were becoming, made me wish I'd never lived long enough to see it. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while every little creak of the house made my heart lurch. I kept picturing his face at the window, the glass fogging with each breath. That smile that didn't belong to him. At some point, I must have dozed, because the next thing I remember is the sound of sirens. They wailed through the early gray of morning, one after another, until the whole town seemed to be wrapped in them. When I pulled back the curtain, I saw flashing red and blue bouncing off the snowbanks outside. An ambulance tore past, followed by 2 cruisers. I told myself it was nothing. Some accident on the highway maybe, but even as I thought it, I knew I was lying. The diner was closed when I drove by later. The neon sign that had glowed faithfully for 30 years was dark. A strip of yellow tape stretched across the door, flapping in the cold wind. Something had happened there. Something they didn't want us seeing. By the 3rd day, the rumors had grown sharp teeth. A kid at the gas station swore his uncle had been in that diner. Said they found blood smeared across the counter, a trail leading out back toward the alley. Another guy muttered about black vans parked outside the hospital, men in suits hauling stretchers out the back. I laughed it off at first. Conspiracy crap. Small town gossip. But then I saw them for myself. 3 black SUVs, windows tinted, sitting outside County General. A group of men in matching windbreakers unloading metal cases onto dollies. Their faces were blank, their movements too synchronized, too cold. I stood across the street with my hands shoved in my pockets, pretending to smoke, but one of them looked up. Just for a second, and I swear he looked right at me, like he knew I was watching. I didn't stick around, but even running errands, even trying to keep busy, I couldn't escape it. People coughing in line at the grocery store. A man doubled over by the lottery tickets at the gas station. A woman wiping blood from her nose in the bank lobby, leaving streaks on the deposit slip. It was everywhere. And then came the first funeral. A neighbor of mine, Dale, lived 3 doors down. Nice guy, retired mechanic. Always waved when he saw me walking the dog. He caught it on a Tuesday and was gone by Wednesday night. They buried him quick. Too quick. I went because that's what you do in a small town. We gathered in the church basement, the air thick with Lysol and whispered fears. His wife sat rigid in the front row, hands clenched around a tissue that never left her lap. But when the coffin was lowered into the ground, I noticed something. They'd sealed it, bolted it shut with thick steel brackets. Not just nailed, not just screwed, bolted. And the men from the SUVs were there too, standing at the edge of the cemetery. They didn't bow their heads, didn't speak to anyone, just watched. That night, I couldn't shake the image. Why would they bolt a coffin shut? You're wondering if I asked. Of course I did. Dale's cousin, a wiry guy with a smoker's cough, muttered something about safety regulations. Said it was to prevent fluid leaks, but his eyes darted as he spoke, and his hands trembled too much for me to believe him. The truth came the next night. I was walking home, cutting through the alley behind the post office, when I heard it. A scraping sound, wood against concrete. I froze, listening. It came again, slow, deliberate. When I rounded the corner, I saw two men struggling to carry something heavy. A coffin, the same size as Dale's, the same brackets on the lid. They moved in silence, except for the groan of wood and the scuff of their boots. I ducked behind a dumpster and watched. They hoisted it into the back of a van, slammed the doors, and drove off without a word. No hearse, no ceremony, just two men, a coffin, and the road. I don't know how long I crouched there, the smell of garbage and oil thick in my nose. Long enough for my knees to ache, long enough for the cold to seep through my jacket. But the thing that haunted me most wasn't the coffin. It was the sound that came just before they shut the van doors. A thud, soft, from inside. I wanted to tell myself it was just the weight shifting, just gravity. But in the silence of that alley, I swear I heard it again. A second thud, quieter, like someone was trying to knock. I went home shaking, locked every door, drew every curtain, sat in the dark until the streetlights flickered on. And even then, I couldn't stop thinking about Dale, about the smile on the man in the diner, about the bolts on that coffin. It was all connected. I just didn't know how. Not yet. The following morning, the first official statement hit the airwaves. A new respiratory illness, they called it. Containment protocols. No cause for panic. But panic doesn't wait for permission. By noon, the grocery store shelves were stripped bare. By evening, gas stations were dry. People locked themselves in their homes, nailed boards over the windows like we were bracing for a storm. And still, every hour, another siren cut through town. That night, lying in bed, I heard something worse than sirens. A laugh, faint, from outside. I pressed my ear to the window, heart hammering. At first, I thought I imagined it. The wind, a stray radio, but then it came again, drifting through the empty street below. A laugh that was too steady, too sharp. The laugh of someone who shouldn't be alive. And it was coming from Dale's porch. I didn't breathe as I pressed my forehead to the cold glass. Dale's porch sat 3 doors down, bathed in the orange glow of a flickering streetlight. The laugh came again, higher this time, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I squinted into the dark, searching for movement. At first, nothing, just his rocking chair swaying gently, as if nudged by the wind. But then the shadow sitting in it leaned forward. I knew that shape. Broad shoulders, thinning hair. Even from here, I knew it was Dale. He should have been in the ground. He should have been bolted in, buried deep, sealed away. But he was sitting there on his porch, like he'd just come back from a walk. His lips split into a grin I'd never seen on his face before. Too many teeth, too wide. I stumbled back from the window. My heel caught on the rug, and I nearly went down, catching myself on the dresser. When I looked again, the porch was empty. The chair rocked harder now, creaking loud enough for me to hear through the glass. That's when I realized he wasn't sitting anymore. He was standing. I didn't wait to see where he went. I killed the lamp, sank down into the corner, and held my breath. Every sound seemed amplified. The groan of the house, the thump of my pulse in my ears. Then, faint but unmistakable, came the crunch of footsteps on snow. Not on the sidewalk, closer, in my yard. I gripped the carpet with both hands, sweat cooling on my palms. The steps paused just outside the window. For a long time, silence. Then, a knock, soft, deliberate. I bit my lip to keep from screaming. The knock came again, louder. I pictured him out there, pale face pressed to the glass, that grin stretching wider in the streetlight. But when I finally dared a glance, the porch was empty, just bare snow, untouched except for a single set of prints leading away toward the woods. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Couldn't. By morning, I thought maybe I'd lost it. Maybe grief and fear had twisted what I saw. But when I stepped outside, those prints were still there. Heavy boots sunk deep into the snow, leading straight from Dale's house to mine. I followed them. I shouldn't have, but I did. Each step pulled me farther from the safety of my front door, closer to the tree line. The tracks cut into the woods, weaving between bare trunks. My breath smoked in the cold, each exhale sounding too loud. And then the prints stopped. No turn, no scatter. Just stopped in the middle of a clearing, like whoever made them had vanished into the air. I stood there, shivering, my ears straining for any sound. The woods were too quiet. No birds, no wind, just silence so heavy it pressed down on me. And then, crack, a twig snapping behind me. I spun, heart slamming. Nothing, just the skeletal trees and shadows. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it, something watching from the stillness, something that didn't belong. I bolted. Branches whipped my arms, snow filled my boots, but I didn't stop until I stumbled back onto the street. I didn't even look behind me. I just ran home, slammed the door, and locked every bolt twice. That afternoon, the news anchors looked like they hadn't slept in days. They read from the prompter in flat voices, repeating the same phrases. Isolated. Outbreak. No need to panic. Stay indoors. But panic doesn't stay contained. Not when bodies don't stay in the ground. By the end of the week, half the houses on my street were empty. Some families fled. Others didn't get the chance. You want to know how I know? Because I saw them come back. One night, I peeked through the blinds and saw 3 of them moving together down the street. Their heads turned in perfect unison. Their steps matched. Too slow, too steady. And their smiles? God, those smiles. Each one identical, stretched wide like the skin would split if it stretched any further. I recognized one of them, the woman from the bank lobby, the one with the nosebleed. She still wore the same gray coat, only now she moved like a puppet whose strings were pulled too tight. They stopped at a house on the corner, Mr. and Mrs. Kellerman's place. The lights inside were still on, shades drawn tight. But light doesn't stop them. I watched as the three figures simply walked up the porch and stood there, motionless for what felt like forever. Then they knocked, together, three knuckles rapping in perfect rhythm. I don't know if the Kellermans opened the door. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned away, shut my eyes, and covered my ears like a child. But I heard the screams anyway. And after the screams, laughter. It went on far too long. The next morning, the Kellerman's house was silent. Curtains open, door wide. Inside, nothing but overturned furniture and streaks of something dark trailing across the floor. The Kellermans were gone. Nobody said it out loud, but we all knew. If you heard the knock, you didn't answer. If you saw them smiling, you looked away. If you smelled the copper tang in the air, you left before you found the source. But some rules don't save you. Because 2 nights later, I woke to a sound that shattered every last bit of safety I'd been clinging to. Not a knock, not a laugh. It was my back door creaking open. The creak of that door cut through the house like a blade. I lay frozen in bed, heart hammering against my ribs, so hard I thought it might give me away. For a moment, I prayed it was just the wind, maybe the latch not catching right. But then came the slow shuffle of feet across the kitchen floor. Deliberate, patient. I slipped out from under the covers as quietly as I could, every muscle trembling. The air was cold against my bare arms, but I barely felt it. My whole body was tuned to the sound of those footsteps. They weren't rushed. They weren't searching. They moved like whoever it was already knew where they were going. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed, the one I hadn't touched in years, and crept to the hallway. My house had never felt so long. Each shadow stretched farther. Each floorboard threatened to betray me. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I edged closer to the kitchen doorway, bat raised, breath shallow. Then I heard it. A laugh. Low, steady, bubbling up from the dark like water through a drain. I peeked around the corner, and my stomach turned to ice. Dale was standing there. He looked worse than when I saw him on the porch. His skin was pale and sagging. His lips cracked from dried blood. But his eyes, they shone like glass marbles, reflecting the dim light of the fridge he'd left open. And that grin, unnatural, wide, showing gums that had receded too far. "Dale," I whispered before I could stop myself. His head snapped toward me so fast it made a crack, like bone twisting against itself. That grin didn't falter. If anything, it deepened. He took 1 step forward. I should have run, should have bolted out the front door. But fear rooted me in place, my bat slipping lower as my hand shook. Dale opened his mouth, and instead of words, a sound poured out. It wasn't a cough, not anymore. It was wet, guttural, gurgling with something thick inside his throat. The same sound I'd heard in the diner that night. Only now it was louder, hungrier. I swung the bat, wild, desperate. The crack of wood against his shoulder echoed through the kitchen. He staggered, but didn't fall, didn't flinch. His head tilted, as if studying me, and then, God help me, he laughed again. Not Dale's laugh, not human. I bolted. Through the front hall, fumbling with the locks, every second stretching into eternity. Behind me, his footsteps resumed, slow but steady, the grin still chasing me in my mind even when I didn't dare look back. I tore the door open and stumbled into the freezing night. The snow crunched under my feet as I sprinted across the yard. Lights flicked on in the neighbors' houses, curtains twitching. R must have looked insane, barefoot, clutching a bat, gasping like a madman. But then they saw him. Dale stepped out of my doorway, framed in the glow of the house lights, his smile catching the gleam. And something changed in the air. The neighbors stopped peeking. Curtains snapped shut. Doors locked with hurried clicks. Nobody wanted to see. Nobody wanted to admit it. I ran until my lungs burned. My feet were raw, bleeding from ice and rock, but I didn't stop until I reached Main Street. It was empty, silent, the shops dark. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, but then I heard it. Not one laugh, many. It echoed from the alleys, from behind the shuttered storefronts, from the church steps across the street. Shapes emerged from the shadows, their movements too smooth, their heads turning in eerie unison. Smiling faces, familiar and foreign all at once, and among them, Dale. They didn't chase. That was the worst part. They just stood there, watching, grinning, their laughter building until it filled the street like a swarm of insects buzzing against my skull. I stumbled backward, gripping the bat tighter, my breath ragged. Then headlights cut across the laughter. A van screeched to a stop beside me. Black, no markings, windows tinted. The side door slid open, and a hand yanked me inside. "Move!" a voice barked. Before I could resist, the van peeled away. The laughter grew distant, swallowed by the night. I sat trembling on the floor, my chest heaving, as the man beside me slammed the door shut. He wore a dark jacket with no insignia, his face hidden under a cap. Across from me, two others sat, rifles clutched tight, eyes scanning me like I was the threat. "What the hell was that?" I gasped. The man closest to me didn't answer. He just handed me a bottle of water and said, flat and cold, "You're lucky we were close." The van rattled down back roads, its windows blacked out. I couldn't tell where they were taking me. Every bump jostled my aching feet, but the pain barely registered. My mind was still back there, on the street, surrounded by grinning faces. Finally, the driver spoke. His voice was rough, clipped. "How long ago did you see your first one?" I hesitated. "The diner. 4 nights ago." The 3 men exchanged looks. Grim, quiet. "Then you're already in it," one muttered. "In what?" I demanded. "What the hell are they? What's happening to people?" The man beside me leaned forward, his rifle resting between his knees. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. "They're not survivors," he said. "Not anymore. And if you don't listen to us, you won't be either." Before I could press him, the van jolted to a stop. The doors flew open, and cold air flooded in. We weren't in town anymore. We were deep in the woods, parked beside a building that hadn't been on any map I'd ever seen. They pulled me out into the snow, rifles raised, scanning the trees. And that's when I realized something. The woods weren't silent anymore. From the darkness, laughter answered. The laughter rose from every shadow, threading through the trees like a chorus that had been waiting for us. It didn't sound human. Not really. Too steady, too synchronized. The men around me raised their rifles, their barrels sweeping the tree line. Their breath smoked in the frigid air, but their hands didn't shake. Mine did. My whole body did. "Inside, now!" one barked. They shoved me toward the building, a squat concrete bunker with no windows, half buried in the snow, like it had been hiding here long before any of us knew why. The metal door groaned as it opened, and the moment we stepped inside, the laughter outside cut off. The silence was almost worse. They sealed the door behind us with a wheel crank. Thick bolts sliding into place. The bunker smelled of oil and dust, and the air was warmer, humming with hidden generators. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered on, buzzing overhead. The inside wasn't military. Not exactly. It was makeshift. Steel tables, stacked crates, radio equipment piled high. A handful of people milled about, some in plain clothes, others in black jackets, like the men who dragged me here. Everyone looked tired, hollow-eyed, haunted. One of them, a woman with cropped hair and a scar across her cheek, looked up as we entered. "Another stray?" "He was cornered," the man with the rifle answered. "Diner witness." That made her pause. She studied me, sharp and unblinking. Then he's seen too much already. They led me deeper, past maps pinned to corkboards, red lines slashing across highways and small towns. Circles marked certain neighborhoods, mine among them. In each circle was a single word, stamped in black ink. Breached. I stopped. "What does that mean?" "Breached by what?" Nobody answered. They shoved me into a chair near the back of the room. My bat was taken. My questions ignored. The woman leaned over the table, her voice low. "You tell me exactly what you saw at the diner. Every detail. Don't leave anything out." Her stare pinned me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. He was coughing blood. Then he just stopped, smiled, like it wasn't him anymore. His hands bent wrong. And when I left, he followed me, smiled at me through the window. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't look surprised. She scribbled something on a pad and nodded at the others. "Phase 2, she muttered. "What the hell is Phase 2? I snapped. The man beside her finally spoke, voice flat. "It's when they stop dying." My stomach nodded. "Stop dying?" He looked at me then, really looked, and in his eyes, I saw no hope, only resignation. They don't get better. They don't heal. They just stop being who they were. And whatever takes their place, it wears their skin like a mask. I thought of Dale, of the Kellermans, of the woman in the gray coat. My skin crawled. "They're not sick," I whispered. The woman's pen scratched again. "No, they're infected." I wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth was already lodged in my chest like a shard of ice. I had seen it with my own eyes. The lights above flickered, once, twice. Then the radios crackled with static. Everyone in the room froze. The scarred woman barked an order. "Check perimeter." 2 men grabbed rifles and disappeared down a side hall. I sat rigid, listening. No laughter outside now, just the faint hum of the generators and the hiss of static. Then, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the metal door. Every head turned. Knock, knock. The sound vibrated through the steel, too precise, too evenly spaced. My blood ran cold. One of the younger guards raised his weapon. "How the hell did they find us out here?" The scarred woman motioned for silence, her hand trembling just slightly. The knocks came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. I couldn't stop myself. My voice cracked. "Don't open it! Don't you dare!" "Shut him up," someone snapped. But no one moved to open the door. They all knew. The sound wasn't asking. It was promising. The knocking stopped. For a moment, silence. Then the laughter returned, muffled through the thick steel, surrounding us from every side. It rose higher and higher, rattling the air vents, until it felt like the whole bunker was vibrating with it. The lights flickered again, then went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. Somebody cursed. A rifle clicked as it was chambered. My breath came fast and shallow. In the pitch black, I thought I felt something brush against my arm, but when I flinched, no one was there. Then, somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, "Not outside, inside," so close to my ear that I felt the warmth of it. "You shouldn't have left the diner." I lunged from the chair, swinging wildly. But my fists hit only empty air. Shouts erupted around me, boots scuffing, hands fumbling for flashlights. The laughter outside crescendoed, vibrating through the walls like an earthquake. Finally, a beam of light cut through the dark. Someone had found a lantern. The bunker swam back into view, harsh shadows stretching across the concrete. But 3 people were gone. Their chairs sat empty. No blood, no struggle, just empty. The scarred woman's face went pale. She turned to me, eyes wide with something I hadn't seen from her yet. Fear. "They're inside," she whispered. The words hit me harder than the cold ever could. "They're inside." The lantern flickered in the scarred woman's hand. Shadows jumping along the walls like they were alive. Everyone else had gone dead silent, rifles raised, eyes darting. No one dared breathe too loudly. I couldn't stop staring at the empty chairs. Just moments ago, 3 people had been there, talking, breathing, alive. Now, nothing. No blood, no sound, just absence. One of the guards swept his light across the far corner. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw movement. A figure crouched low, smiling in the dark. But the beam shifted, and the corner was empty. "Check every room," the scarred woman ordered. Her voice cracked on the last word. 2 men moved down the hall again, flashlights slicing through the dark. I stayed glued to the table, hands trembling. The bat they'd taken from me, suddenly the only thing I wanted back. The laughter outside hadn't stopped. It pressed against the bunker walls, low and constant, like it was sinking into the concrete itself. Then the radios crackled, not with static this time, but with a voice. At first, it sounded distant, warped. Then, clearer. "Open the door." Every muscle in me seized. The voice wasn't one I recognized. It wasn't male or female. It was flat, wrong, like syllables spoken through a cracked speaker. "Open the door." The guard swore, twisting dials, slamming switches, but the voice kept bleeding through every frequency. "Open the door, open the door, open the door." Over and over, steady as a metronome. The scarred woman ripped the cord free, silencing it, but the words still hung in the air, crawling under my skin. And then, silence. Too much silence. The 2 men who had gone to check the rooms hadn't come back. We waited. A minute. 2. Then faintly, screams. Muffled, cut short. The scarred woman cursed under her breath and grabbed her rifle. She pointed at me. "You, stay with us. You wander, you die." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, as if staying in this bunker guaranteed anything but death. But my throat was too dry to make a sound. We pushed deeper into the building, the lantern's glow barely stretching ahead. The hall smelled damp, the air heavy with mildew and iron. Somewhere, water dripped in slow, mocking rhythm. The first body was at the end of the hall. one of the missing guards. He lay flat on his back, eyes open, mouth frozen mid-scream. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and across his lips stretched the faintest trace of a smile. The woman beside me gagged. Another whispered, "Oh God," but I couldn't look away. His smile, it wasn't wide, not like the others, just faint, like he was halfway there. The scarred woman muttered, "They're changing faster now." Before I could ask what she meant, a shadow slid. Across the wall, no source, no figure, just the shape of movement. The lantern sputtered. Then from behind us, footsteps. Slow, even. We turned as one. Down the hall, a shape emerged from the dark. A man, or what was left of one. His face was slack, his smile carved deep, eyes glassy like river stones. His arms hung at unnatural angles, elbows bending the wrong way as he walked. The guards opened fire. The gunshots were deafening in the narrow hall. Sparks burst from the concrete walls. The figure jerked and staggered, but didn't fall. Bullets punched through him, but still he kept coming. Then he laughed. The sound froze every muscle in me. High and sharp, echoing off the walls, multiplying until it sounded like a dozen voices laughing at once. One of the guards broke, dropped his rifle, turned, and ran. He didn't make it 3 steps before something dragged him into the dark. His scream cut off so fast it left a vacuum in the air. The scarred woman yanked me forward. "Move!" We bolted down another hall, the lantern bouncing, shadows writhing around us. Behind, the laughter chased, growing louder, closer, until it felt like it was inside my skull. We burst into a wide chamber, part storage, part command center. Metal shelves lined the walls, stacked with crates. In the center, a heavy hatch led downward, a spiral staircase disappearing into deeper black. The scarred woman shoved me toward it. "Down," I hesitated. "Are you insane? That's underground. Do you want to stay up here with them?" The laughter was closer now, echoing at the edges of the room. My choice wasn't a choice at all. I gripped the cold rail and descended, each step groaning under my weight. The air grew damp, heavy, tasting of rust and stone. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a cavernous space, lit by a handful of bare bulbs strung along the ceiling. And what I saw there, rows of coffins, dozens of them, metal, not wood, each one sealed with bolts, lids groaning faintly like something pressed against them from inside. Scratches marred the surfaces. Long, desperate scratches. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. "What the hell is this?" The scarred woman's face was ghostly in the dim light. Containment, or it was. I stared at her, horrified. "You knew. You've known this whole time." Before she could answer, the sound came from all around us. Knock, knock, knock. Every coffin in perfect unison. The sound was unbearable. Dozens of fists hammering the insides of the coffins in rhythm. The metal ringing like a war drum. Each knock vibrated through the floor, into my bones, into my teeth. I backed into the wall, shaking my head. No, 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 no. The scarred woman's eyes glistened in the dim light. She raised a finger to her lips. Quiet. But how could I be quiet with that noise? With the air quivering under the weight of it? Then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the pounding. At least the noise told us where they were. A scraping sound came next, metal on metal. I realized with horror what it was. The bolts turning from the inside. "Move," she hissed. She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the far end of the chamber. The other guards followed, faces pale and weapons trembling in their hands. The first lid popped, a hiss of air, then another and another. I turned just enough to see the coffins opening. Figures sat up inside them. Not corpses, not fully human either. Their movements were stiff, jerky, as though remembering how to work their own limbs. Their eyes snapped open all at once, dozens of pairs shining with that same glassy sheen. And then the smiles spread. Too wide, too eager. The sound of laughter erupted, overlapping until it became a wall of noise. They weren't looking at each other. They were looking at us. We ran. The tunnel narrowed, the bulbs above swaying from our motion. Behind us, metal clanged as the things climbed free of their coffins. The laughter grew sharper, slicing into my skull. The woman shoved a door open at the end of the corridor, and we stumbled into another chamber. This one looked older, like it had been part of the original mine. Jagged stone walls glistened with moisture. The air was colder here, sharp in my lungs. I braced myself against the wall, gasping. What the hell were those? The scarred woman's expression was grim. Survivors. The word cracked something inside me. My stomach turned as I replayed the images in my head. The bodies in the coffins, the smiles, the laughter. That's what happens, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant echoes. If you live through the first stage of the virus, you don't stay you. But guards shifted uneasily. One crossed himself. Another muttered, "Better off dead." I didn't know what to say. The words jammed in my throat like shards of glass. Then, footsteps. Not running, not chasing, just walking. Slow, certain. They were coming. The woman raised her rifle. This way. We moved deeper into the mine, our shadows stretching long across the uneven stone. Water dripped from the ceiling, each drop echoing like a gunshot in the silence. My chest ached from the cold, from the panic clawing up my throat. The tunnel forked ahead. She led us left, into a passage barely wide enough for two people. The walls seemed to close in, scraping my shoulders. Then we heard it again. Not footsteps, not laughter, whispering. Dozens of voices murmuring, rising and falling in unison. Words I couldn't understand, syllables stretched wrong, as if the language itself had been bent out of shape. The guards froze. One dropped his lantern, the glass shattering, flame sputtering out. Darkness swallowed half the tunnel before the others relit their lamps with trembling hands. The scarred woman gritted her teeth. Don't listen. But I already had. And I swear, I recognized my name in that jumble of inhuman sounds. We stumbled out into another chamber. This one larger, circular. Stalactites hung like teeth from the ceiling. Pools of black water dotted the floor. That's when the first of them stepped into the light. Its head tilted too far to the side, neck bending like wet rope. Its arms dragged along the stone, long fingers scraping furrows. The smile never wavered, stretching wider, blood dripping from cracked lips. The guards opened fire. Gunshots echoed, deafening in the cave. The figure convulsed, slammed back against the stone, but didn't fall. It just laughed, high and shrill, until another round tore through its skull. Silence, but not for long. More shapes filled the tunnel. 10, 20, maybe more. All smiling, all whispering, all walking toward us. Panic ripped through the group. One guard fired wildly, bullets ricocheting off stone. Another dropped to his knees, muttering prayers. The scarred woman didn't waste time. She threw a flare across the chamber. It landed in one of the pools, igniting the oil-slick surface in a burst of orange flame. For a moment, the cavern glowed hellish red, shadows writhing across the walls. The things froze, heads cocking in eerie unison. "Run!" she ordered. We sprinted along the edge of the fire, deeper into the cave. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't dare stop. The laughter and whispers followed, threading through the roar of the flames. At the far end of the chamber, a narrow shaft yawned upward. A ladder clung to its side, rusted but intact. The scarred woman shoved me toward it. "Climb!" I hesitated, staring up into the darkness. "Where does it go?" "Does it matter?" She was right. I grabbed the rungs, hands slipping on rust, and hauled myself upward. The metal groaned under my weight, flakes of rust breaking free and raining down. Halfway up, I risked a glance down. The guards were firing into the swarm. The things advanced anyway, bullets tearing flesh that refused to die. One by one, the guards fell, their screams blending with the laughter. The scarred woman climbed after me, jaw set, eyes blazing. She didn't look back. I reached the top and shoved at the hatch. It resisted at first, sealed by years of grime. I forced my shoulder against it, teeth gritted, until it burst open with a metallic shriek. Cold night air rushed in. I scrambled out onto the surface, onto a wooded hillside under a black sky riddled with stars. My chest heaved. I sucked in the freezing air like it was salvation. The scarred woman climbed out behind me, slamming the hatch shut. She collapsed beside me, both of us shivering in the night. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just breathing, just alive. Then, from beneath the hatch, knocking. The knocking wasn't frantic. It was patient, measured. 3 slow raps that vibrated through the hatch into the cold earth around us. I scrambled back, shaking my head, whispering, "No, no, no." The scarred woman pressed her palm flat to the metal, listening. Her breath puffed white in the night air. "They'll keep coming," she said, finally, voice hollow. I stared at her. Then why shut it? Why not just burn the whole place down? She gave me a look that chilled me more than the air ever could. "You think fire stops them?" The forest was dead silent. No insects, no wind, just us shivering on that hillside. And then, faintly, from deep below the ground, came the sound of laughter, so faint it could have been imagined. But we both heard it. The woman pushed herself up. "We can't stay here if they spread." She trailed off, didn't finish the thought. We stumbled down the hill, our footsteps crunching frost-covered leaves. The night smelled of pine and distant smoke. My legs shook with exhaustion, but fear kept me upright. Every shadow between the trees looked wrong. Every sound too sharp. Finally, we reached an abandoned road, cracked and overgrown with weeds. She stopped, scanning the tree line, rifle trembling in her hands. "What now?" I asked, my voice breaking. Her eyes flicked toward me. "Now, Now we survive long enough to warn whoever's left. We followed the road in silence, moonlight silvering the asphalt. For a moment, it almost felt calm. Almost. My body begged to believe we'd escaped, that the nightmare was still underground. Then I heard it. A single laugh, high, sharp, bouncing off the trees. We froze. My throat clenched. The sound came again, closer this time. And then the whisper. My name, clear as anything. I spun, scanning the woods. Empty. Just black trunks stretching into forever. The woman gripped my arm, nails digging deep. Don't listen! But I already had. The laughter multiplied, echoing from every direction, weaving through the trees until I couldn't tell where it started or ended. Shadows shifted between the trunks, too fast for my eyes to catch. We broke into a run. Branches whipped my face, tearing skin. My chest burned, every breath a knife. The road vanished beneath our feet, replaced by tangled roots and frozen soil. Behind us, the laughter swelled, impossibly loud, impossibly close. I risked a glance back and saw them, figures slipping between the trees, pale and smiling, their movements stuttering like broken film. Eyes reflecting moonlight, teeth bared too wide. Dozens, maybe hundreds. My legs nearly gave out. But the woman yanked me forward, half dragging me through the woods until we burst into a clearing. A cabin sat there, collapsed and rotting. Its roof caved in, windows dark. It wasn't safety, but it was something. We stumbled inside. The air was thick with mold and dust, boards creaking under our weight. She slammed the door, barred it with a broken beam. For a moment, silence again. I collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, ears ringing from the absence of sound. The woman crouched beside me. Her face looked older in the moonlight through the broken window. Every scar and crease carved deep. They're not just infected, she whispered. They're connected. Every one of them. The virus, it makes them part of something else. Something bigger. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was insane, but the words caught in my throat. Because deep down, I already knew she was right. I could still hear them, even now. Not with my ears. In my head, faint whispers curling through my thoughts. Open the door. My skin crawled. The woman gripped my shoulder hard enough to hurt. You fight it. Do you hear me? You fight it. But even as she said it, I saw her hand trembling. We stayed in that cabin until the first hint of dawn crept over the treetops. The laughter had faded with the night, leaving only silence. I almost let myself hope. Almost. When the light spilled across the floorboards, I saw her face clearly for the first time. The scars didn't hide it. The tightness of her jaw, the twitch at the corners of her mouth, a smile, small, barely there, but a smile. My stomach turned to ice. She caught me staring. For a second, her expression hardened, then softened into something almost like pity. It doesn't matter how far you run, she said quietly. If you've been close, it's already in you. The words ripped the air out of my lungs. I stumbled back, shaking my head, heart slamming. No, I'm fine. But even as I spoke, I felt it. A tightness in my cheeks, a twitch in muscles I couldn't control, my lips pulling upward. I clawed at my face, trying to force the smile down, but it held. My hands shook. Tears blurred my vision. The woman looked at me with something almost like sorrow. Then she raised her rifle. "If you were me," she asked softly, "would you open the door?" I couldn't answer. My mouth was stretched too wide, my throat filled with laughter that wasn't mine. The last thing I saw was her finger tightening on the trigger, and the last thing I felt was relief. Because once you've survived the virus, you're not really surviving at all.